head instructor for Best Defense Concepts. And today I'm here with Jim Golbeck. Thank you, Jim, for coming out and talking to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, no problem.
So Jim was a former Chicago police officer, is that correct?
Yes, for 23 years.
It's a long time. And I asked Jim to come out and talk to me because of what's currently going on, what's been happening because of this George Floyd situation. We're going to talk about that, kind of the use of force by police, kind of talk about excessive force as well. And then my hope is to have bring up some ideas that maybe we can look at how can we resolve or start to address the use of excessive force, in some situations anyway, by police officers. Racism, of course, is a big issue. We're not going to be talking about that today. It's a huge, expansive issue that needs a lot of discussion by a lot of people, and Jim and I aren't going to resolve that problem. So we're just not going to talk about that today. We're just going to focus on this small part that I think can be resolved by additional training and tools for police officers. So with that, Jim, can you tell us a little bit about your time working for the Chicago Police Department? Just kind of an overview.
Well, I started in 1994.
Okay.
It was not long after the Rodney King riots.
Wow.
There was a lot of funding for the police across the U.S., so there was a huge influx of police hiring, so I got on at a very good time.
Okay.
And it was a very fun time. When I got on, the first few years of my career were just absolutely exciting, fun, just learning about the job in general.
Okay.
But they generally say when you're a police officer, it takes maybe 5 years before you're completely adept at the job. And you see that. There's things you learn every day. As a matter of fact, in my career, there was things I learned, almost every day in my career.
Okay.
There's just little nuances on the job.
Well, what would you say would be, and I'm sure there's a number of things, but what would you say is the hardest thing to learn as a police officer that you learn while you're doing the job?
Well, the paperwork is completely different than anything you've ever done in school.
Okay.
You have to word everything a certain way.
Okay.
You have to have certain contexts, and it takes a little while to get that all perfectly.
Okay.
You have to learn how to deal with people differently than in real life, because you're the authority figure. So you're making decisions. So that's a big thing. Early in my career, you'd go to, say, a domestic, and you're all kind of charged up because you're new on the job, and you're thinking, well, we're going to arrest this guy, and he's going in. Well, I learned quickly that you need to slow your roll, and you basically need to really talk to both sides before you make a decision.
Okay.
Now, when you're young on the job, a lot of young officers just assume you're locking the husband up and it's over.
Right.
You have to talk to both parties at least. Now, that's something that's very important in police work. You always, even like with a neighbor dispute, you have to get both sides completely before you make a decision. So that's very important.
Okay. Yeah, there's always two sides to every story, and then
Yes.
everything that's not said by either of the parties, right?
Yes, and a big thing is if there's witnesses.
Right.
That helps tremendously.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go back in time to your days at the police academy. So my understanding is that depending on which police academy you attend, it can be a longer or shorter period of time, that they all do things a little differently.
Yeah, our CPD academy was 6 months.
6 months. Wow, that's a long time.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in general, I mean, I'm sure you cover a lot over a 6-month period, but what are the highlights that you're really focusing on when you're going through the academy? What are they trying to ingrain in you and teach you?
Basically, they want to get you in the mind frame of a semi-military feeling.
Okay.
It's not civilian life anymore. So it's pretty regimented with marching and taking orders. So you got to get into that semi-military flow.
Okay.
which, anybody that wasn't in the military is not used to at all. So it takes a little getting used to, but studying, there's a lot of studying, note-taking, there's hands-on training. So basically, every day was different. We do lining up for inspection, marching, a lot of classroom. We do physical training. We would do, like, they call it Red Man.
Oh, yes.
Where you dress up.
The suit, yep.
In the suits and, tangle with each other and
Okay.
try different holds and positions when you have an assailant attacking you or
Okay.
coming at you. So it's a wide variety of things every day.
Okay. Well, if we focus on, let's say, the hands-on component, so we're talking about dealing with use of force, so that's going to be, and we're going to go into this a little more detail, but right now just talking about that from the police academy standpoint, when they're showing or teaching the hands-on part, how much time would you say you spend on that? I mean, is that something that's done throughout the course of it? Is it something that's like they sent a week aside, or how does that?
No, it's very sporadic.
Okay.
It's not done every single day, but it is pretty consistent.
Okay.
So in a given week, you might do it 3 or 4 times, and then the next week could be less or more. So it just depends on how the curriculum is lined up.
Okay. So now, go to the academy. They give you all the basic knowledge or basic tools you need to kind of start. Now, once you're out and now you're on the street, as far as with the physical skills, what are the police doing as far as keeping you up with that kind of training? Because I assume there's got to be something else that they would provide you with as you're going along.
Well, over my career, it ebbed and flowed greatly.
Okay.
There was years where once I graduated, there wasn't much special training after the academy. And then there was years where, we would have special training. We'd go in for, it just all depended.
Okay.
But I couldn't say specifically. It was very sporadic throughout my career.
Okay.
There was times where I wouldn't go in for any special training for years, and then maybe a couple years where you went 3 or 4 times for special training.
Okay. Because in addition to being a practicing attorney, I've been doing martial arts for 30 plus years, so I do some self-defense instruction. I have worked with officers at other martial arts schools, and I've trained some officers. And most of those officers have told me, and I know they all come from different law enforcement agencies, but most of them have told me that they go to the police academy, they get their training, and then that's it. And they're on their own. They've got to actually go out, and that's where they come to me or they go to other schools, and they're like, we're not getting anything. So in order for me to increase my skills, I have to spend time, I have to spend money, and so to me that seems a little short-sighted by the police. And it's one of those things where I think they could focus on giving police more confidence in those skills, because in my mind, if you don't have the confidence to use those skills, I go to the academy, you teach me some stuff, but now 2 years down the road, I haven't had to use them. Now I get into a situation, and I don't have this confidence in my skills. What am I going to do? I'm going to go to what I really know. What do I know? I know my baton, I know my firearm, taser, OC spray, but my hand-to-hand skills, maybe I could have used them, but I haven't been trained enough. I mean, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, you're correct. There's many years where, huge gaps where we don't get any physical training per se. But throughout my career, the use of force model shrank and shrank.
Oh,
so early on in my career, it was a higher threshold.
Okay.
You could do more things to protect yourself.
Okay.
Over the years, because of things that have happened in our country, that changed and that lessened pretty greatly towards the end of my career. Early on, it was basically pepper spray and your mag light, your big mag light, and wooden nightstick.
Yep.
Those were huge deterrents to people, let me just tell you.
Okay.
But, over the years, I didn't have that much time on where they outlawed the mag light, the big metal mag light. We could not carry those anymore. We went to like a poly 6, 7 inch, 8 inch flashlight. and that was a huge loss of deterrent with people. We still had our nightsticks. And then probably from what I remember, in the early 2000s maybe, the Tasers came out. And that was like a big thing back then.
Yep.
Certain officers did not carry them. I've heard very conflicting things about the use of them. And I've seen firsthand many times how ineffective they can be.
Yes.
Same with pepper spray. Pepper spray could drop somebody in a heartbeat, or somebody, it has no effect on them whatsoever, and they're laughing. So it depends on the situation, the individual. I mean, if somebody's hopped up on, PCP or Coke or whatever, it's going to have a different effect.
Right.
Yeah. So a lot of times we just had to get physical.
Okay.
And, early in my career, we used the nightstick as a tool to strike the arms and legs if somebody
muscles,
was coming at us.
Okay.
Obviously, they did not want us striking anybody in the head or face for obvious reasons. But over the years, they wanted us to get away from the nightstick, and that was just basically an emergency thing. But on CPD, we basically, you would just need to get physical, and you would literally have to fight.
Go hands-on.
Fight, throw punches sometimes. And if you never did that in your life, I'm not saying either way if I ever did that before I was a police officer, but I never had a problem doing it. But you just needed to defend yourself, and there were some times where you just had to rely on your fists.
Yeah.
That the other tools were ineffective. So when I was in the academy, the instructors used to joke, "We're going to teach you all these holds and pressure points and red man training, and then you're going to go out there and box with people." And they said Chicago police are known for that.
Okay.
I'm not putting Chicago police down in any way, but sometimes you just had to straight up box with people. But yeah, it just varied throughout my career. But like I said, the use of force shrank over the years to the point where when I retired, it was much less than when I started.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that about how the instructors are saying we're going to teach you all this stuff, but in the end, you're probably going to just focus on basic punching, right? There's a saying out there, and I have no idea who said it, but it was, we don't rise to the level of our expectations, we fall to the level of our training. So whatever it is that you train on doing, and you do that regularly, that's what's going to happen. You can't do something a few times, or anybody you start training, whatever it is, unless you do it regularly and it is muscle memory that you've got, it's not going to happen because you're going to be under stress, tunnel vision, you can't hear what's going on, you can't see, you can't think, you just have to react, and that requires a lot of training. There's just no way around it.
And that, in the case of my career, when you get into a foot chase or a car chase or whatever, and you jump out, you are so jacked up on adrenaline that you just do what comes natural when you're in that situation, and it's hard to come down off that high when you're feeling like that.
Okay.
So it's just like kind of like survival mode.
Right.
Yeah.
Fight or flight, the typical, right?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. So at this point, I wanted to talk, I'm going to give this to you because you have a copy of it. Just go over briefly. So this is use of force continuum. This is kind of a general policy. Most law enforcement agencies are going to have their own variations of this use of force continuum. But I just want to kind of talk about it because we're going to bring this all around to the George Floyd situation. So you start with what is at the very initial part of the use of force, which is not force at all, but basically your presence, right? The idea is that police show up, it may have some impact on the situation.
If I could interject.
Please.
Over the years, that is absolutely not as significant. Like when I first got on the job, early years, just our presence was enough.
Okay.
Most times. but over the years, for whatever reason, the level of respect just waned.
Okay.
I mean, to the point where around when I retired, it was sometimes almost non-existent.
Okay.
It was getting, not scary per se, but just unreal how people lost and did not, some people did
Right.
not respect the police anymore.
Okay.
There's always been and always will be good people that respect the police and
Right.
abide by the law, but towards the end it was getting pretty bad,
Okay.
the loss of respect with the public.
Okay. So you show up and you might expect anything's going to happen, right? They're just not going to have
yeah.
respect for the badge or the uniform.
Yeah.
So that, as you said, that's losing its power. So just showing up isn't going to do it. And then it says, after your presence, of course, is verbalization. So now we're just giving orders, commands, trying to get people to do things. Again, that I'm assuming is only going to have a limited impact, again, depending
They
on.
used to call it verbal judo
Okay, yes.
in our department,
Yes.
which we would laugh at, but okay.
So you're there, you're giving commands, that's not working. So now the next step up there is empty hand control, and that kind of gets broken down into two things. Soft techniques, which usually refers to some sort of grab, hold, or joint lock to try and restrain somebody.
And we did use those over the years.
Okay. Hard techniques, which are now going to be striking, kicking, punching, right? And then from there, you're now going to move on to basically tools that we were kind of just talking about, right? From what are considered less than lethal. So blunt impact, so essentially that's going to be your baton or your asp or whatever you've got. Chemical weapons, so you've got your OC or your pepper spray, and then your tasers or your conducted electrical weapons or devices. So did you carry, you said you had the nightstick, did you carry pepper spray or the taser?
I always had pepper spray.
Okay.
I don't believe I ever used it in my entire career.
Okay.
If I did, maybe once or twice.
Okay. Because it's, like you said, pros and cons to everything, right? So when it comes to pepper spray, you have the problem with the wind that is going to impact.
And I was affected by that several times, many times.
Like you said, you're in a situation where you have stress and you're not paying attention to which way the wind's blowing. You're trying to use this weapon on somebody. Now it's blowing back at you, or maybe another officer's using it, it's blowing in your face, and now you have an impairment because of the pepper spray.
And obviously it wasn't intentional by the officer.
No, obviously, yeah.
When you're grappling with somebody on the ground and you're trying to spray someone, it doesn't always go where you plan.
Yeah,
plan
exactly. And then, of course, like you said, it's not always going to have the same impact on people. It might for the majority of people, but not everybody. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work.
Absolutely does not on some people.
So now then, as you said, they came out with the taser, which is going to resolve everybody's problems, right? The tasers can be used in two ways: either from a distance, where it's going to shoot out probes, or in close, where they've got little probes that you can use, drive stun, they call it. Now, I understand with tasers, I've never been tased, but I've seen it used, and it has to be at a certain distance so that the probes hit in a certain way, allows the electricity to go through the body and essentially locks the person up. And you don't want to be grabbing them at the time they're being shot because you can feel it as well. So that creates an issue because not only can the taser probe hit places you don't want it to hit, causing more damage, it may not hit at all. If it doesn't hit skin, you got a problem. It's not going to create the current.
I'll give you
Please.
another big issue that we had over the years, and I was never myself a taser person, but they were always out on the street. Sergeants were required to carry them.
Okay.
A lot of gangbangers and dope dealers, especially in the winter, would wear many layers. And the effectiveness of a taser when somebody's wearing 3 or 4 hoodies or jackets is pretty much nil.
Okay.
So that is a problem.
Okay. I've also heard that people can get hit the ground, roll, the probes come out, and now you've lost the effectiveness as well.
Seen that many times.
So again, I'm sure it has its effectiveness, but again, it's not always going to be 100%, right? So
I've seen it go both ways many times.
Okay. And then this one here lists lethal force. So now you've got basically firearm. But what this one doesn't list, which I thought was interesting, because it doesn't talk about chokeholds in this particular use of force continuum. Now, my understanding is a lot of agencies don't allow chokeholds anymore. They don't teach them. They don't allow them to be used except in a life and death situation because it's considered a type of lethal force. When you were in the academy, what was their position on chokeholds, if you recall?
From 1994, from what I remember, it was, if anything, a last resort.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like it would fall under the lethal force type of situation. So, because other people, the officers I've talked to have told me that we just don't train them anymore. They won't let us do them.
Yeah, I know later in my career it was pretty much outlawed.
Yeah. Because while effective, again, it's another thing where if it's done wrong, and so we'll talk about that now. So chokehold. So let's go to talk a little bit about the George Floyd situation, right?
Okay.
So I'm sure you've seen the video, of so these officers in Minneapolis go after George because apparently he was accused of passing counterfeit money, I believe was the allegation.
Yes.
So they want to take him into custody, and they claim he was resisting. So they take him down to the ground, cuff him, and then one officer puts his knee on his neck for almost 9 minutes, which leads to his death.
Yes.
I believe at least one autopsy has said that was the cause of death. What is your thought about what happened in that situation?
It was absolutely despicable. It was horrific.
Yeah.
When I saw the video, I got sick to my stomach. I knew immediately it was going to once again destroy police work as we know it in the United States, vilify the police,
right.
Cause outrage, cause racial divide. And my theory is that guy was an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, George Floyd was 6'6", but they had no right. This officer had no right to do that. That was despicable, like I said. And then now I've learned extra knowledge after the fact about the couple other officers that were standing around.
Okay.
Apparently they had approximately 4 days on the job.
Okay.
And he was their training officer.
Oh.
So in my viewpoint, he should do some hard time.
Yeah.
He should not see the light of day for many, many years. He deserves every bit of hard time he gets. He's an idiot. He's an asshole. For him to do that and divide the country and divide our races again is horrible.
Yeah.
But I will say I have a little empathy for the two rookie officers that were police officers for 4 days, and he was their training officer.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it, you're a brand new rookie, and he's your training officer.
Mm-hmm.
You usually do whatever he says.
Right.
How many rookies with 4 years on the job or 4 days on the job are going to actually go up to their FTO, field training officer, and say, please get off him, stop, or physically move him?
Right.
Probably not many.
Right.
So I'm not saying those rookies were right or didn't do anything wrong. They should have, at the minimum, verbally spoke to him and said, hey, come on, it's enough.
Right.
I actually felt like, not that I would have been up in Minneapolis in the area, but I actually told people that if I was up there for whatever reason, obviously off duty and in the area, and I witnessed that, I don't want to sound like, trying to save the world or anything, but I probably would have pulled out my badge and said, hey man, come on, you can't breathe, whatever.
Right.
You're going to kill this guy or whatever. Obviously, I wouldn't have probably gone up to him and physically shoved him off, but I probably would have definitely spoke my opinion and said, come on, you're killing the guy.
Right.
You know, and it was just horrible. I mean,
well, there's no question about it, and you know, it is, as you said, it's created that, and of course, other issues similar to that have led up to this, and you know, it's bad enough that he was putting him in this position for what didn't seem like it was necessary, but when he started asking for help, saying, I can't breathe, I'm in pain. Now again, I believe, now he's a training officer, it makes it, you know, that much worse, that when people are asking for help, you're supposed to give them, put them in a better position, get medical attention, not just ignore their pleas for help, right?
Absolutely.
So
yes, that's what makes it more terrible.
Yeah. And so you can see why, you know, even in this particular one where he's not putting pressure on both sides of the neck, but clearly enough on the one side of the neck to cause this damage, why the police are getting rid of these types of holds, if you will. And I guess Minneapolis had allowed it up until very recently. They just said now, well, we're getting rid of all chokeholds, right? So they're a little behind the curve.
Now, I'm not defending him or them in any way whatsoever, because I don't agree what they did. But there's been many times in my career where we had to kneel on somebody's back because they were so fervent on resisting us.
Right.
Even if they were cuffed, they were still trying to get up and trying to fight. And I'm not rationalizing what they did in any way, but there's been many times in my career where somebody had to kneel on somebody's back for a short period of time, maybe till you got some help or whatever. But it has been necessary in my career, but I can't recall anybody ever kneeling on somebody's neck. And especially when somebody's saying they can't breathe.
And like you said, so you do have a difference between kneeling on their neck and kneeling on their back, right? And again, how you do it, it's always important, you know, how you're applying those techniques, and then realizing that maybe you should stop applying them when certain things happen. So, you know, someone's in a fighting position like you're saying, and they're not giving up, and it seems like they're definitely being extremely aggressive, which clearly Floyd was not. All right, so sounds like an entirely different situation.
Yes, laying on your stomach cuffed.
Yeah.
Again, there's been many people that still tried to fight and get up over my career, you know, doing that in that position, but I mean, he just went too far.
Yeah. So I presume, so let's just say, for example, you are taking a suspect down for whatever reason. So you're arresting somebody, you take him to the ground, you put the cuffs on him. What would you generally do with somebody if they're complying? So now you've got him on the ground, you've cuffed them. What happens next, generally speaking? What would you do?
Basically pick them up and put them in the back of the squad.
All right. So no reason to really keep them in that position for any length of time,
No, if they're being compliant.
If they're being compliant, yeah. Okay. All right. So we've talked a bit about, you know, the different tools that are available to the police, the fact that you've got a training component that I think, at least from working with our police officers, and I think you would agree that more hands-on training is probably a good thing, at least to reinforce the things you're being taught. The other concern I have is that if you have officers who are going to wherever they're going because I need to learn these skills, and I can't learn them but the police aren't teaching me, so I have to go somewhere else and get these skills. So now they're going to different schools or different instructors. So now, are they teaching you things that you should be learning? Are they all, you know, per police protocol? I don't know, because now you've got all these different instructors really giving all this different knowledge.
And honestly, over the years, I know obviously a lot of Chicago police officers, but also a lot of suburban police officers. Every department is completely different on their training. I know a lot of suburban police officers that go to outside agencies for special training.
Okay.
And it just varies with every department.
Yeah. So, you know, some continuity, I think, would be a good thing, particularly among people in your own department, at least. Right?
Yeah.
So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, kind of a new tool I was telling Jim about. So there's a company that I'm affiliated with called Compliant Technologies, and they've got these gloves as well as some other tools out there. But today I want to talk with Jim about these, and I don't think you were familiar with these before. I'd mentioned these to you, right?
I was not.
Okay. So it's a type of conducted electrical weapon. So the idea is that on the order of a taser, but very different and built into a glove. And I want to ask Jim, so we're going to kind of take a break, and we're going to kind of work with these a little bit, and then I want to get Jim's opinion on what he thinks about them and if they would actually make it easier for police to get people to comply, if they'd help them do their job better, and kind of just see what he thinks about it. So we'll take a break, and then we'll be right back.